Sponsored by Rabbi Shlomi and Mirla Greenwald. This is a Sicha from Likutei Sichos, Chelek Parshas Toldos, Sicha Alef. And the topic of the Sicha is that in this week's Parsha, we learned the Pasuk. So this Pasuk comes after the previous Psukim that speak about the wells that Yitzchak dug, and there were fights over those wells. And this Pasuk says, Vayatek Misham, Yitzchak left from that place, Vayachbar Be'er Acheres, and he dug another well, V'lei Ravu Aleh, and did not fight over this well. Vayikra Shma Rechavis, he called the name of the well Rechavis. Vayemer, and he said, Ki ato hirchav Hashem lanu, for now Hashem has expanded for us, He has made room for us, ufarinu va'aretz. And we learned the teaching of Rashi on the last two words of ufarinu va'aretz. And there are three parts in the Sicha. The Rebbe will, number one, ask two questions on Rashi. Number two, answer the questions, and also answer an additional two questions that will be brought up within this answer. And number three, present the Yenishal Torah in Rashi. On the pasuk, Vayatek Misham, and he left from there, Vayachbar Be'er Acheres, and he dug another well, V'lei Ravu Aleho, and they did not fight over it. Vayikra Shma Rechavis, and he called it with the name Rechavis. Vayemer, and he said, Ki ata hirchiv Hashem lanu, for now Hashem has expanded for us, He has made room for us. Ufarinu va'aretz. So on that pasuk, Rashi quotes the final words, Ufarinu va'aretz, and he explains the meaning of these words is kitargume, like the Targum says, V'nefesh ba'ara, and we will increase, and we will grow in the land. The Mefarshim write regarding what Rashi is teaching here, because the question is, what's Rashi's teaching telling us? What is he explaining in the pasuk? So they explain that there's a difficulty here in the pasuk that Rashi is addressing, and that is that l'cha'era, seemingly, the word ufarinu is in the past tense. It's lashon avar, and since it says right before ufarinu va'aretz, it says ki ata hirchiv Hashem lanu, because now Hashem has expanded for us, now Hashem has made room for us. So how can it say ufarinu already in the past ba'aretz? It should say something like v'nifra ba'aretz. Now that Hashem has expanded for us, so v'nifra, we will increase in the land. Not we already increased in the land. And therefore Rashi writes that the meaning of ufarinu here in our pasuk is v'nefesh, which means in the future. So that's the question that Rashi is addressing. The word ufarinu is seeming to be lashon avar, and his explanation is that it's not lashon avar, but rather it's lashon asid. It means v'nefesh, and we will increase, we will grow in the future. However, it's difficult to give this explanation of the Mefarshim, and therefore we have the original question of the Mefarshim, which is, what is Rashi teaching us here? And in addition, there's another question on this teaching of Rashi. The difficulty with this explanation of the Mefarshim is that we find many times in the Torah words that are lashon avar, past tense, and by adding a vav before the word, it changes them to be lashon asid, the future. And this is known as a vava hipuch. You add a vav before the word, and it switches it from being lashon avar, past tense, to lashon asid, which is the future. And actually, in this very parak itself, we have 6 such examples. 3 of them are, it says vahakimaisi. So hakimaisi is past tense, but vahakimaisi is in the future. It says vihir beisi. Here beisi is past tense, but vihir beisi is in the future. And also it says vinosati. Nosati is past tense, but vinosati is in the future. And so therefore it's simple that also here the meaning of ufarinu, with a vav beforehand, it doesn't say parinu, it says ufarinu, means to increase in the future. And therefore there's no difficulty with the use of this word, because it means in the future, and so Rashi doesn't have to explain it. So what is it that Rashi is coming to address over here with his teaching of kitargumai v'nefesh ba'ara? And the second question on Rashi is that Rashi explains the word ufarinu and not the word ba'aretz, because the word ba'ara, that in Rashi he quotes v'nefesh ba'ara, it doesn't add anything to the word ba'aretz. So if that's the case, why does Rashi also quote the word ba'aretz from the pasuk? He's not coming to explain that word. He's only coming to explain the word ufarinu. So now we're going to move straight into answering these two questions, and we're going to begin by presenting the main point of the answer and answering the first question. Now, in the first question itself, there are really two parts. Number one, we have to understand what is the difficulty in the pasuk that Rashi is coming to address with his teaching and explanation. And number two, once we understand what the difficulty is, we have to explain how the teaching of Rashi addresses that difficulty. So the explanation on this is as follows. The word ufarinu is from the lashon of pri, and the meaning of the pasuk is ufarinu ba'aretz, is that we will make peiros. And since this pasuk refers to lanu, which are people, it says ki ato hirchiv Hashem lanu, that they will make peiros, so it means that they will be fruitful with sons and daughters, similar to what it says in Parshas Breshis, pru or vu. On the other hand, it's understood that it's not the same as over there. When it says over here ufarinu, it's not the same as what it says pru or vu, because Rashi explains in the pasuk of pru or vu, he says im lo amar ela pru. If the pasuk only said the word pru, he's explaining why does it say pru and then also add or vu. If it only said pru, haya echad meilid echad v'lo yeser. Each person would have one child and not more. Uva or vu, so the word or vu comes and teaches us she echad meilid harbe, that one person can have many children. What do we see from here? Meaning that pru may even be said about one child. However, over here, where ufarinu comes in continuation to what it says in the pasuk, ki ata hirchiv Hashem lanu, that now Hashem has hirchiv, He has expanded for us, and as a result ufarinu va'aretz. So it doesn't make sense at all that it means echad meilid echad v'lo yeser, that the word ufarinu means like pru, that each person will have one child and not anything more, which is essentially a bracha, or essentially a statement ufarinu va'aretz, that he won't be barren. And that doesn't fit into the flow and context of the pasuk here, because that's not hirchiv at all. That's not hirchiv, which is to have things expanded. So it fits in the word, but it doesn't fit into the flow and context. So it's understood that ufarinu over here is similar to what's written elsewhere about Hashem removing the goyim from the land of Eretz Yisrael, where it says, Lo yagashenu mipanecha b'shana echas, I will not expel them from before you in 1 year, pentia art shmama gamer, lest the land be desolate. Rather, ma'at agashenu mipanecha, I will slowly expel them from before you, ad asher tifre gamer, until you will increase. That the meaning of tifre here is that there will be many people in the land, and that's the way it won't be desolate. And so similarly over here in our pasuk where it says ufarinu va'aretz, the meaning of ufarinu is to increase greatly, she'echad meilid harbe, that each person will have many children. And then it fits into the flow and continuation of the pasuk. As a result of ki ata hirchiv Hashem lanu, Hashem has expanded for us, so ufarinu ba'aretz will have many children in the land. But according to this, there's a great difficulty. The explanation of ufarinu, meaning to have many children, has a different difficulty, and it's a great difficulty, which is we know that Yitzchak and Rivka only had 2 sons, Yaakov and Esav. So how can we say about this, having 2 sons, ufarinu, which we said means to increase, and in our pasuk, when it comes in continuation to hirchiv, which should be even a greater type of increase, how can we say that about just 2 sons? So to say it's like pru, then it doesn't fit in the continuation of flow of the pasuk, just to have 1 child. And to say it means like tifra, which is to increase, that doesn't fit with the reality that they only had 2 sons. So this is the difficulty that Rashi is coming to address. What is the meaning of the word ufarinu? And what's Rashi's answer? And therefore Rashi explains that the meaning of ufarinu is not about children, but rather it means v'nefesh. What does v'nefesh mean? And Rashi already told us the meaning of this word v'nefesh on the pasuk that talks about the rivers in Gan Eden, where it says over there shem ha'echad pishain. So Rashi says over there al shem shemeimav mizbarchim, because its waters are blessed, v'oilinu mashkenes haaretz, and they rise up and water the land. Therefore nikra pishain, it's called pishain. And he says k'may, like it says in the pasuk in Chavakuk, upashu parashav, their chariots will increase, which means that the thing itself increases and becomes greater. Meimav mizbarchim, the water themselves are blessed. And upashu parashav means the chariots themselves increase and become more. There was more and more chariots. And so similarly over here, the meaning is that Yitzchak himself will be bigger and greater. So the meaning of the pasuk is ki ata hirchiv Hashem lanu, for now Hashem has expanded for us, ufarinu ba'aretz, and we will become great in the land. And like it indeed says about Yitzchak, vayigdal ish, vayelech, holich, v'gadol, ad ki gadol ma'ed, Yitzchak became great, he constantly became greater until he became exceedingly great. He had cattle and animals, and he had a great enterprise or great production. And so the meaning of the word ufarinu is that Yitzchak himself and they themselves will become great. So now we have the answer to our first question. What's the difficulty? The difficulty is the meaning of the word ufarinu, and we have how Rashi answers that with his teaching, that when it says ufarinu, it's like v'nefesh, which means that they themselves will become great, and not that they will have an offspring, an increase through their offspring. Now we're going to move on to answer a side question on Rashi. This is a question that wasn't brought up at the beginning of the Sicha. And that is, however, according to this, we have a difficulty, which is, why does Rashi bring this explanation of his in the name of the Targum? He should have just said it on his own, based on the above proofs about the meaning of the pasuk. We explained how, based on the meaning of the pasuk, we have to say that when it says ufarinu, it means that they themselves will increase. So if that's all understood from within the pasuk itself, why does Rashi have to give this explanation from the Targum? And the answer is that the reason for this is, in most of the places where the lashon of pru is used, like in pru revu, so the Targum says it means pushu, meaning what do we see from the Targum? That according to the Targum, even when the word pru is referring to having children, which means to be being fruitful, it still has the meaning of pishyon. It always has the meaning of pishyon. An explanation for how when having children could be described as pishyon is because through children, the one giving birth also becomes greater. So according to the Targum, we always say v'nefesh is the meaning of ufarinu always, even when it refers to children, because then it means the person becomes greater through having children. And if it means just the person, so then it means v'nefesh, the person themselves grow without children. They have their own growth. So from here it's understood that according to the Targum, that when the meaning of ufarinu only means the person themselves increasing, like over here, and it doesn't mean having children, this explanation of the word is not different than what it means in all the other places, because in all places, this meaning is included in the word. It always means to grow. The question is, does it mean, like as it usually does, to grow through being fruitful and having children, or does it mean just to grow, the person themselves are growing, like it means over here? And therefore, Rashi refers to the Targum to teach us that this explanation of a nefesh is not one of a loy matzasi lechaver. Sometimes Rashi says loy matzasi lechaver. I don't find anywhere else how this word is translated in this way. It's always better to say that this word is translated the way it is translated everywhere. And so therefore Rashi brings it in the name of the Targum to bring out this point that according to the Targum, this is the meaning of the word ufarinu everywhere. It always means to grow and increase. Just sometimes, and usually it means through being fruitful and having offspring. And over here it means to grow and increase, that they themselves will grow and increase, and not through children. Now we're going to move on to answer the second question, which was that Rashi over here is explaining the meaning of the word ufarinu. So why does he quote from the pasuk? Why does he also quote from the pasuk the word ba'aretz? Rashi says he's giving an explanation of the words ufarinu ba'aretz, and he only explains the word ufarinu. So the answer to that is that there's actually a difficulty with this explanation of Rashi, and he's addressing and answering and removing that difficulty by quoting the word ba'aretz from the pasuk. So yes, he's explaining the word ufarinu, but he quotes the word ba'aretz in order to reinforce his explanation of ufarinu, because there's a question in it that's answered through the word ba'aretz. And the question is that l'chayra, seemingly, this explanation of Rashi that ufarinu means that they themselves will increase and not through having children and being fruitful, it isn't necessary. We can explain that ufarinu refers to offspring, and nevertheless it fits with saying Hirchiv Hashem lanu. Hashem has expanded for us. It still fits, and it would fit according to what Rashi writes in Parshas Vayera. So this is something Rashi already told us. He says that b'nei vanim harei kivanim, that the sons of one's grandsons, are like sons, and therefore we can say that when it says ufarinu, it means that they will increase, that they will be fruitful through their children. They'll have peiros, they'll have children, and even though we see that they only had two, so how can we say about that ufarinu that it's a great increase, a great level of being fruitful and after hirchiv? And we can say that it refers to the sons of Yaakov, which were 12 sons in Dinah. So that's a great amount of offspring. So therefore, in order to remove this question on Rashi's explanation, that Oferinu means that they themselves will increase, and not that they will be fruitful, and it can't mean through their grandsons. So therefore, Rashi quotes at the start of his explanation the word Ba'aretz. And since he quotes it, so he also writes in his explanation the translation of the Targum of Ba'ara. But the main thing is quoting it at the beginning, quoting it in his Dibra Maschel, quoting it from the Pasuk. Because the sons of Yaakov weren't born Ba'aretz, but rather they were born in Chutz La'aretz, in Charan. And so when it says Ufarinu Va'aretz, it can't refer to them. And since it can't refer to them, we have the difficulty of what it means, and that's why Rashi is compelled to say that it means the nefesh, we ourselves will become great, we ourselves will grow and be big and great. Now we're going to move on to address another side question, and this will lead us into the Yena Shel Torah. Another detail that we can point out in Rashi is, why does Rashi quote the words of the Targum? He should have just written Kit Targumai and nothing more, like he does in many places. And the one learning can look in the Targum to see that it says V'nefesh ba'ara. And the explanation is that there are two gersais, there are two versions of the translation of the word V'nefesh in the Targum. Number one is V'yafshinana, and number two is V'nefesh, that he will increase us or that we will increase. And Rashi quotes the words of the Targum to teach us that the correct girsa is v'nefesh. And even though it's not the task of Rashi to inform us of the correct girsa in Targum, however, over here, there's a difference in the meaning in Pshutei Shel Mikra. Because v'yafshinana means that he, Hashem, who was mentioned earlier in the Pasuk, will do it. Hashem will make us great. And v'nefesh means that us on our own, meaning Yitzchak and his family, will become great. So therefore Rashi doesn't just say ketargumai, rather he says also the words v'nefesh ba'ara, that tell us that the correct girsa is v'nefesh, that we on our own, meaning Yitzchak and his family, will become great, and not v'yafshinana, that Hashem will make them great. From Yena Shel Torah and Rashi, Rashi quotes the words of the Targum of V'nefesh Ba'ara, not V'yavshinana, but V'nefesh, that we ourselves will become great. Which means that in the Pasuk there are two inyanim. There's the first part of the Pasuk where it says, Ki ata hirchav Hashem lanu, which that refers and alludes to the idea, the inyan of what comes Momayla from Hashem. And number two, there is V'nefesh Ba'ara, which that refers and alludes to the inyan of Avodas Ha'adam. And Rashi hints over here that the purpose of Hirchiv Hashem Lanu, the purpose of what comes Ma'omayla, is V'nefesh Ba'ara, that a person should work. Meaning that the ultimate purpose of the creation of the world and of a person through Hashem, which is the Hirchiv Hashem Lanu, what Hashem did, is that a person should exert themselves and work. And like it says, Adam la'omal yulad, a person is born to work. And the manner of the Veda is V'nefesh Ba'ara. That's the work that a person has to do. That the person should work with the world and with the things in the world to the extent that one reaches a level that the person kaviyachal adds v'nefesh to the creation the way it was created by Hashem. Meaning that one reveals a lakus through Torah and mitzvahs, even in such a place that mitzvah the creation, there is no lakus revealed there. And like the Maimar Razal, where it says, Nasa shutuf la'kadosh baruch hu b'ma'aseh bereshis, we become partners with Hashem in Ma'aseh Bereshis, because we're adding Elokus even in places that mitzvah the creation there is no Elokus. And Chazal said even more than this of Nasa Shutuf, that Ma Kadosh Baruch Hu Beira Elamais, just like a Kadosh Baruch Hu creates worlds, Af Avichem Beira Elamais, also your father creates worlds. So that's the Avodah that's being hinted to over here. Number one, that there has to be Avodah, and that's the purpose of everything is the Avodah, and that the Avodah is of a nefesh ba'ara, to work with the world and the things in it, and to bring Elokus into the world, even in places where that mitzvah the creation there is no Elokus. However, there is room for a claim. How is this possible? Since Hashem created the world and He created it with these limitations, so how is a person or a malach, which is a creation, able to add to this? So the answer to this too is hinted in the beginning of the pasuk, where it says, "Ki ata hirchiv Hashem lanu," meaning that also the koyach for the person to be marchiv, to expand and add in the creation, comes from Hashem, who was marchiv and gave Yidden koyach that is above limits and boundaries, and therefore Yidden have the ability, and so automatically, if we have the ability, we also have the responsibility to be mevatel the limits of the world and to expand it in ruchnius, and automatically, when we expand it in ruchnius, we also expand it in gashmius, because through this we add in the bracha of a nosna Eretz Yevula. We're adding physically in the world the brachas, and it says that Eretz Yisrael is like a deer, that the physical space itself expands. Chazal talk about it in Gemara, until the nefesh ba'ara, that there will be a tremendous increase. This inyan that we see in Nenishal Torah in our pasuk, that there are two inyanim. There is what's given Momaila, and that there's the Avodah Samata, and that the Avodah Samata is to add to what there is in the world, and that the koyach for this comes from Hashem. So this inyan is also hinted to in what's written in the pasuk in Tehillim of Hanoichi Hashem Alekecha, I am Hashem your God, Hamalcha Meretz Mitzrayim, that brings you up from the land of Mitzrayim, Harchav Picho V'Amaleyu, widen your mouth and I will fill it. So here too there are two inyanim. Number one, there is a Noichi Hashem Alekecha, a Malcha Me'eretz Mitzrayim. That is the inyan of what comes Momaila. A Noichi Hashem Alekecha, I am Hashem your God, that brings you up from the land of Mitzrayim. So that's what comes Momaila, from above. And then there's Harchav Picha. What the person has to do is that a person must work to widen the mouth more than what it is mitzad the creation. And here too we have to understand, since Hashem created the mouth in a certain way, and like it says, Misam Pela Adam Gomer, who gave a person a mouth? It's I Hashem. So how can it be that a person is able to be march of the mouth? So to this comes the response from the beginning of the pasuk, that Anoichi Hashem Alekecha Malcha Eretz Mitzrayim. Eretz Mitzrayim is a land of limitations and boundaries, and Hashem brought up the Yidden from these limitations and boundaries. It doesn't say in the pasuk like it usually says Hamoitzi Acha, that takes you out, but rather that brought you up, meaning that Hashem raised the Yidden above the limitations, and therefore one is able to and must do the avodah of harchav picha, which is to be mevatel the limitations. And this is what Hashem wants in creating the world. The Yidden should add to it through their avodah, and Hashem gives them the koyach for this. It's through the Anechi Hashem Alekecha that Yidden have the koyach for this. And this is also the explanation in Pnimis Inyanim of the response of Rabbi Akiva to Turnus Rufus Harasha. It's a Gemara in Bava Basra. In short, the Gemara over there, Turnus Rufus asked Rabbi Akiva, how can a Yid give tzedakah if it's going against Hashem? And Rabbi Akiva answered that Yidden are the children of Hashem, and therefore Hashem wants that we should be mefarnes His children. And so B'Pnimis saying on him, what he's saying over here is that since Yidden are banim lamokim, meaning that they have a chelek l'kamim al mamish, so that gives them the ability to change the way things are mitzad creation. And it's explained in this pasuk, in the pasuk of Anechi Hashem Alekecha, that Hashem promises and gives even more than what He promises. Not only does He give the koyach before the avodah that comes from Anechi Hashem Alekecha Malcha Meretz Mitzrayim, He also helps afterwards that the avodah should bear fruit and achieve its purpose, which is that it should affect an addition in the world, make a change in the world. Like it concludes in the pasuk V'amaleyu, that Hashem will fill up, meaning that Hashem will help that the avodah is successful. And this too, that Hashem helps during the avodah itself, is hinted in the pasuk in our parsha. The words ufarinu ba'aretz are not a lashon of tefillah, to daven for something, or bakasha, to request it, where by tefillah and bakasha it's in doubt whether it'll be fulfilled. Rather, they are a lashon of certainty. Ufarinu, we will certainly increase in the land, because we are promised that if we fulfill the will of Hashem and do the avodah that He demands, we will certainly achieve its purpose. So it's not just that Hashem gives the koyach, but that Hashem also helps and makes it certain that we will succeed in this avodah. And we accomplish not only ofarinu ba'aretz in Lashon HaKodesh, but rather also kitargumai v'nefesh ba'ara in Targum. And we know that it's explained about Lashon Targum that it's chel, which means that we affect a harchava and a safa, not just in the world the way it is in Lashon HaKodesh, the way it is in a more elevated state, but rather also in matters of chel, of the world, ba'ara, We do it in Ara, in Loshen Targum, that also in them a dir le'izbarach is made. And when this avodah is fulfilled of affecting a change and a haisafa in the world, so then the yud, the prophecy of a nigluk vedavaya, v'rochol basar, all the way to the flesh, it will see yachtav k'bi Hashem diber, that yud will also be fulfilled.